China will be emboldened because this is a proof that the international community would not be able to help Ukraine to fight against Russia's invasion.
Ambassador, can you give our listeners a sense of, I suppose, the danger that you feel that Taiwan is in at this current moment in time, and where that threat comes from for you?
Well, people in Taiwan are always conscious about the existing threat from China. And we're not saying that we are not afraid of being invaded, but I think the threat has been existing for such a long time, and people started to know that we need to get prepared for it. But in the meantime, we shouldn't be panic. We should continue our business, continue our development. But we are very clearly aware that the threat is coming from the other side of the Taiwan Strait.
And when you talk about that threat, I mean, you are talking about the threat of a direct invasion, really. That's what you're talking about. Do you get the sense that that's now closer than it ever has been before?
Not really. I would say that China's capability is growing, and its military modernization is getting much faster, and they are also preparing for a use of force against Taiwan. But I wouldn't say that the threat is getting closer, because Taiwan is also trying to get prepared and trying to prevent this from happening. I think the international community, particularly among the like-minded countries, including the UK, has been working to try to prevent this from happening. So we certainly hope all these deterrence would work.
But there are repercussions, aren't there? I mean, the US has agreed some new weaponry for Taiwan, which I'm sure is very welcome, but as a result of that, China is saying there will be repercussions.
Yeah, but since 1979, each and every US administration has been continuing to supply defensive weapons to Taiwan, according to the Taiwan Relations Act. And this hasn't been interrupted. So every time China say there will be repercussions, and they actually sanction those US companies which provide these weapons to Taiwan. But the fact is that most of these US weaponry countries or industry companies, they don't really have much business with China. So the repercussion China mentioned were mainly referring to the sanctions against these companies. Yeah. And the United States has been very clear on its position. It will continue to provide sufficient defensive weapons to Taiwan, because it is the obligation under their Taiwan Relations Act.
And do you, in your mind, no matter who wins the US election, is that still the state of play?
I would be very confident to say that the supporting Taiwan and supporting Taiwan's freedom and democracy is pretty much a consensus, between Republicans and Democrats in the U.S. And certainly, we don't take it for granted. Taiwan continues to safeguard our own freedom and democracy, being in a very important position in the first island chain. We also work very closely with the United States on many different aspects. So we are very confident. We got a very strong bipartisan support in the U.S.
Some people say, some experts in the region say that President Trump would be more likely to destabilize things. He could be more of a risk for you.
Certainly, Mr. Trump could be more unpredictable, but I think many of its administration's Indo-Pacific policies were made by his very close staff, his team, his national security team, foreign policy team, who were very clear about the threats that China imposed in Indo-Pacific. So they also work very closely with Taiwan to safeguard the free and open Indo-Pacific. I think in that regard, even if Mr. Trump gets reelected, his second term in the administration, I think his team will continue to attach a lot of importance to the Indo-Pacific.
Do you think in the United Kingdom we take the threats against Taiwan seriously enough?
I think the British government is now gradually understanding more about the potential threat from China, not only against Taiwan, but also against the entire Indo-Pacific, entire freedom of navigation in the region, and even the UK's own national security and national interest. I think the British government has been eventually getting more understanding, more aware about China's potential threat.
But we've been a bit slow, maybe.
I wouldn't say it's been slow, but I think in Europe, in the past few years, it's been focusing so much on the war in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So certainly, Indo-Pacific, it seems to many European countries a faraway region. But I think the fact that China has been helping Russia in the war in Ukraine and has continued to helping Russia's economy, so Russia can continue this war in Ukraine. I think all these facts have actually struck alarm in many European countries.
I'm interested that you say that because our former Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, he has said recently that if people allow Russia to win in Ukraine, that actually, Taiwan could well be next.
Yeah.
That would be the next logical step. Yeah. He's linking those two conflicts together quite clearly.
Right. Yes, I also read the article, and we appreciate very much that he was talking about that. But certainly he was focusing more on Ukraine. But many countries believe that if Russia took Ukraine, and China will be emboldened, mm-hmm. because this is a proof that the international community would not be able to help Ukraine to fight against Russia's invasion. And it will certainly embolden China to use the same tactics to annex Taiwan. So not only Mr. Sharp, but also many other analysts, experts are making a similar analysis.
So what, in your mind, should countries like the UK, and maybe more broadly, be doing, with that in mind, on Ukraine, but also when it comes to China? What more could we be doing right now?
I think the UK, the British government, has been doing quite a lot, working with other like-minded countries, particularly the G7 members. In the past few years, the British government has joined other G7 members in issuing joint statements, no matter it's a leader's statement mm-hmm. or foreign ministers, defense ministers' statements, always concerning the peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, and also stress that the peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait is an integral part of the prosperity and security of the entire world.
But how does it sit with you, for example, that David Lammy has recently gone to visit China? I mean, he's our new foreign secretary. He's only just in post. It's one of his first big visits is to go and meet with the Chinese. Yeah. Are you comfortable with that? Is that the right move from the UK government?
I think this is not only conducted by the UK government. Now, many countries in the world, including the United States, have been trying to seek more opportunities to engage with China. They believe that through engaging with China, can we, try to incorporate China into this international norm. I don't know whether or not it will be effective, but they believe this is better than not engaging with China or without any communication channels. UK government, particularly Labour government, probably has the same position on China, and they want to engage more with China so they can talk about issues they may not agree with, between each other, including the Taiwan issue. So I hope they take this opportunity to also express their concern about China's threat against Taiwan.
But do you think China's listening? Because that's the point, isn't it? I mean, we could go over and we can, David Lammy said that the message is compete, cooperate and confront. I mean, we could use very neat language, but is China taking us seriously?
I don't think China is taking that seriously. On the other hand, China may use the opportunities to try to express their own positions on Taiwan. But I do believe that continuing express the UK's position or any other countries' positions vis-a-vis Taiwan with the China is a way to express like-minded countries' positions on Taiwan. And clearly, they tell this face-to-face to Chinese leaders. Actually sends a very strong signals to China.
Is there a compromise position with China on Taiwan?
I don't see any compromise position on China's side right now. Right? They never denounced the use of force against Taiwan. But in recent month since the 20th Party Congress. And if you look at the third plenary session of the CCP this year, they continue to talk about peaceful reunification as the ultimate goal for CCP. But certainly they don't denounce the use of force. I think China has been applying the so-called two-hand strategy, carrots and stick strategy to try to prove to Taiwan and the rest of the world they are capable of taking Taiwan by force.
And if that were to happen, or if China were to pursue that, it would have obviously huge implications for Taiwan,
right,
for the Taiwanese people. And I do want to talk to you about that. But it would also have huge implications for the global economy, for the economy here in the UK, for the economy around the world. Do you have an estimate as to how big an impact that something like that could have?
We do. We have an internal research on this. So the research has shown that even for the interruption of the transportation in the Taiwan Strait, we're not talking about quarantine or blockade. Even the interruption of the transportation will probably cause, 2 trillion to 3 trillion of economic loss globally.
Dollars?
And
or pounds?
US dollars, yeah. And these researchers are actually aiming at some major economies only, not all the economies around the world. We are talking about US, Japan, Korea, UK, Germany, France. These major economies, the total loss will be over 2 trillion US dollars. But certainly there are many other researchers like Rhodium Group of the United States, Bloomberg. They also made a similar research, and their estimation would be even larger. The loss will be larger than the damage done by COVID and financial tsunami.
We've talked a little bit about the diplomatic efforts and the messaging. Is there a country that you think that China listens to more than any other? Or a person, maybe?
Not really. But they certainly cared more about the United States position.
So that election will be very important.
Right.
Yeah.
And even recent days, I read a news article about when Xi Jinping was meeting with Biden this year, and Xi Jinping was trying to convince Biden to tweak the wording in the statements made by Biden vis-a-vis Taiwan, to try to change the U.S. does not support Taiwan independence to U.S. opposed to Taiwan independence. Yeah. So even that wording is important to
Very
China.
Important.
Yes.
Yeah.
So apparently they care a lot about United States position on Taiwan.
Which makes it more important for Taiwan to be included in some of the huge global structures, one of which obviously is the Interpol General Assembly. You are currently, as a country, being blocked from participating in that by China. Do you see any route to changing that?
The route to changing that is to change the misinterpretation of China's on United Nations General Assembly Resolution 2758, which passed in the 70s by the United Nations when Taiwan was forced out of United Nations as a member and as a member of the Security Council. But that resolution only addressed the issues of the PRC's representation being to replace the Chiang Kai-shek's representation at the United Nations. It never touched upon Taiwan, never touched upon Taiwan's sovereignty or status. But China misinterpreted that and connected with its own one China principle and tried to make the world believe that this is an international norm. It's a universally accepted international regulation that Taiwan is part of China. But Taiwan has never been part of the PRC. We've never been ruled by the PRC.
Yeah.
And China used this in any international organizations, not only in Interpol, but WHO, ICAO, UNFCCC, these international organizations, functional organizations, which Taiwan tried to attend as an observer. Even more, China tried to press other countries to accept this one China principle and try to downgrade, to belittle Taiwan. The most recent case is in South Africa. South African government were pressured by the Chinese government. Now they try to force our representation out of the Pretoria to move to Johannesburg simply because of China's pressure. That also reflect China's influence among the global South.
So I suppose my question is, given everything that you've just said and this acceptance of a one China position, what are you asking for? What would you like the UK to do, or the US to do, or Europe to do when it comes to Interpol, the UN? What's your ask?
Now the UK has been also, per our request and our communication, the UK government has been working with other like-minded countries to support Taiwan's meaningful participation in these international organizations. And first, they also do not agree with China on their definition about the UNGA Resolution 2758. They don't agree with China's position on one China principle. The United Kingdom always say they have their own policy on Taiwan, and this policy has not been changed. And also, the UK has been working with the US, Japan, and other countries to support Taiwan's participation in the WHO. Your health minister, health secretary stood up to support Taiwan in the World Health Assembly, to support Taiwan's participation. And I hope that the British government will also support Taiwan's participation in Interpol.
Has the UK said that it will do that? Do you have a guarantee that will?
Not yet, but that's what we are working on.
Yeah, that's your message to them today.
Yes.
Ambassador, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.